On the 2nd of November, Goshon High-Tech, a Chinese mega battery company, said it had been approved and work would go ahead on its first battery gigafactory being built in Michigan. Major news media across the United States reported that Goshon Inc. was working to finalize plans for its $2.4 billion, 2,500 job battery plant in Michigan. And then all of a sudden, everything came crashing down. So what exactly happened? How did this massively powerful company backed by the Volkswagen Group with many, many billions of dollars of cash to splash, how did a small local group of American citizens bind together to overthrow this decision and basically dump this factory into the bin? Joe Biden and the US government, and in fact, not just the current US government in power, but also Republicans, have said they have very, very strong opposition to Ford having a lithium-ion phosphate battery factory in the United States. Now, the reason they oppose this is because they say that Ford licensed CATL's technology. CATL is the biggest battery company in the world. Means this is a way for China to get power in the United States, and they don't want that. They believe, even though this would be a Ford factory, that this would be a way for the Chinese government and for Chinese companies to sort of start to take over the American automotive market. The American manufacturing industry is under threat from China, they say. Now, I reported on this, and I also reported on the fact that I found it very strange that politicians were opposed to Ford having their own factory, but they weren't opposed to Goshon High-Tech, which is a Chinese company building its own mega battery factories in 2 different cities in the United States. And strangely enough, American politicians still haven't mentioned anything about those battery gigafactories that Goshon High-Tech were approved to build. However, the residents in one of those cities have kicked out the entire administration. They've been completely removed as a result of the Chinese battery factory, which would have, by the way, brought a lot of money and jobs to the area, being approved by those local politicians. A Michigan town has voted to oust the entire government over the Chinese factory, which had been approved. Now, this was a multi-billion-dollar investment, and it's resulted in a drastic change. In other words, these politicians have just been booted out completely from Michigan. Residents were upset over the board approving a Chinese, they say a China-linked factory. It's not a China-linked factory at all. It's a Chinese factory. Goshon High-Tech is actually one of the most impressive battery companies in the world with some of the best battery technology. They're completely Chinese, but they are partly owned by the Volkswagen Group, who now own, I believe, about 23% of the company. The rest of it is basically Chinese owned. They have Chinese factories dotting across China. Anyway, a resident said, "We want everyone to have a voice, not to have any secrecy anymore." So it's believed there was secrecy about these plans, but there wasn't actually. There was thousands of media reports on these plans, so I don't think there was any secrecy. I'm not really sure what that resident is talking about. Anyhow, the new board in Michigan will be sworn in this week, and they're just really the beneficiaries of anger over this decision to build this Chinese battery factory. This rural Michigan town voted to oust its entire local government after the town board approved a Chinese-affiliated, the Chinese electric battery plant. Residents of Green Charter Township in Michigan strongly disapproved of their local township board's decision to greenlight the construction of a Chinese-connected electric vehicle battery plant in their community, said News Nation Now. Now, obviously, different media have reported on this, but it's not really been talked about by any mainstream media, which is shocking to me, really surprising. I don't really understand why everyone's so quiet about this. I think it's quite an interesting story. But anyhow, a locksmith was brought in on Tuesday night to change the locks on the outed officials. Apparently, they had offices there, and the offices are now empty. But the people of this Michigan township, they were so angry, they got locksmiths to change the locks. They didn't trust these politicians would just leave of their own accord because they'd been voted out. Anyway, the project was expected to create more than 2,500 jobs as part of a $2.5 billion investment. But the town said no. Despite the backlash from residents, the board moved forward with the Chinese project. My family members fought communism, and you're bringing it right here, a local resident said last year. Now, as far as I know, there wasn't any threat of communism to Michigan or to America in general, but clearly local residents thought that communism was about to arrive. Not really sure why. Anyhow, News Nation visited the town in April, and a resident named Corey Rebow, who had no experience in politics, said, "I don't know why they would approve it, other than somebody must be benefiting from it." So in other words, it appears as though local residents might have been thinking there was corruption going on. Goshon High Tech was underhanding millions of dollars to local politicians. Is that possible? Of course, absolutely it's possible. It's happened before. Did it happen this time? I've got no idea. There's no evidence to say that it didn't happen, but who knows? Rebow then ran for clerk and won. Wow. She said, "We just plan on making it as difficult as we possibly can for them to continue this process. They don't even have a site planned. They don't even have permits yet. So we're not their friend," Rebow said of how the new government is going to handle the Goshon lithium-ion phosphate battery plant. Now, she's a clerk, so I think she's maybe self-aggrandizing here, kind of exaggerating her ability to change this massive decision. So, sorry, I don't think generally clerks are the people that make these decisions, but either way, clearly the local people in this township had a lot to say about this decision, were able to basically completely reverse it. It's possible a communist connection that so many Green Charter Township residents said drove them to the polls fueled the town's anger. So a lot of the town, it's perceived, did believe there was some sort of communist goals here from the Chinese government. Now, I just want to point out Goshon High Tech is not owned by the Chinese government. There's a lot of companies in China, SAIC, MG Motors, LD. There's heaps of companies in China that have part ownership from the Chinese government. But as far as I know, Goshon High Tech is actually not one of them. Anyhow, Goshon denied allegiance to the Communist Party of China, but its corporate records say the company shall set up a party organization and carry out party activities in accordance with the Constitution of the Communist Party of China. I'm not sure what that means exactly or how that's relevant, but apparently there's something into that. Right now, we are not on friendly terms with China. They are threatening us. I consider them the enemy. I don't want them here either, said resident Harry King. With the overwhelming distrust for the town's government, a clerk from a neighbouring township ran for election and then counted the ballots. Cheers apparently erupted as results were revealed. That the town had elected to remove the entire board who were involved in the decision-making toward the battery factory. The new board will be sworn in on Wednesday in the process to keep Goshon out of Michigan and out of America will begin. Goshon has already bought the property, so there was a location involved. This clerk was incorrect, saying they hadn't picked a property or a location or been approved. In fact, that's all false. The location was approved, the factory was approved, and they had bought the land. The new board is expecting a long road ahead, but they said they're willing to fight. So it looks like Goshon High Tech are going to fight this decision from the new board in Michigan. But realistically, I'm not really sure this local board were really the true power players here in this decision. I think that we're getting a little bit off track. They're getting a little bit off track. I honestly think that the Elected officials representing Michigan probably had more say in decision making. Anyway, we want everyone to have a voice and not have any secrecy anymore. This whole thing that went down with Goshen was horrible from the first go around. And like I said, the people have spoken. One woman told News Nation during Tuesday night's election celebration. News Nation reached out to Goshen for a comment, and the company said, "We are a multinational company and don't believe in political posturing and are still committed to bringing thousands of jobs to the state of Michigan." So Goshen clearly believe that they can still win this fight. They can still get this battery factory through. And remember, they have some very powerful backers. In fact, let's be fair here. This is not just Goshen High Tech. This is the entire Volkswagen Group, who own a quarter of this company. And they are far more powerful, my friends, than Michigan. Michigan is, of course, a very important state in the United States. But the Volkswagen Group, with debt of $190 billion, and being the second largest automotive group on the face of the earth, produces far more economic wealth and income, and therefore has far more power than Michigan or any single person in Michigan. So does that mean that I approve of the factory personally? No, not necessarily. I'm not sure what I think. This is quite an interesting story. But I don't believe it's likely that this board being ousted by angry citizens in Michigan means that this factory won't be built. In fact, at this stage, I would say Goshen are probably in a more powerful position than local people in Michigan realize. And this is going to be a very tough fight. I'm really interested to see what happens. Guys, what are your thoughts here? Do you think that these citizens are right? Do you think that this permit to Goshen should be revoked and they should have to sell the land they bought their property to build the factory on? Do you think that this is the Chinese Communist Party trying to infiltrate China, as some of these citizens have claimed? Now, I don't think that's true, but I can understand why Americans are concerned about China taking over the automotive industry, because that's actually real. That is definitely happening. For good, for bad, not sure I think it's good. I mean, this company makes great batteries, but there is a lot of American companies making batteries that are pretty damn good as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching.